The following Defending Our America episode is presented without commercial interruption by Sig Sauer.
So an interesting thing is the Iroquois Nation would have a way of looking at problems in their society. And they said, we think about the fifth generation unborn when we make a big decision. How will that decision affect the fifth generation unborn? Imagine that level of starting. That's where we're going to start the conversation. You can still ask all the other questions. How's it going to help us now? All that, but the value is put on the future and the children.
We're a unique generation right now because we are in a position to hand off a country to our next generation that is worse than when we got it, and that has never happened before. Generations previous to us have always handed off something better.
Every decision that's being made right now is either based on a knee-jerk reaction or based on a political party's beliefs, or the simple fact that the Republicans and Democrats can't get along. If your answer is, it'll help me today, it'll make me feel good tonight, you're answering the wrong questions.
I think Iraq's a perfect example of that lack of forward thinking, because you have a political promise made, we're going to get out of these wars, and we did get out of the war. We just didn't end the war.
You know, in my mind, it's a legitimate argument whether we should have been there in the first place or not. People can make that argument, and I'll respect it, okay? But once we made the decision to go in, then we should have committed to whatever it takes to stabilize things and develop the type of environment and that for success. We were well on that road when I left. The level of violence was so much when I first got there in 2006 that it was common to hear multiple car bombs going off daily somewhere in Baghdad. By the time I left in December of 2007, it was a rarity. You just didn't hear them anymore. And in fact, there were weeks that went by when there were no American casualties at all. We could have had, I think, much more success in Iraq had we committed to staying there. Would there still have been violence? Absolutely. Would there still have been American casualties? Unfortunately, there probably would have been. But I think we were well on the road to achieving success in Iraq, and we gave up. We just packed up and left.
We left the people, the 20+ million people of Iraq, hanging. We made promises on the blood of American soldiers and the blood of the Iraqi people. Promises that we would free them and then be there to help them. And then we walked away from that without thinking even a week ahead of what this is going to leave and what was left behind. A terrorist haven now. ISIS has taken over, and now they're the best armed terrorist faction ever to exist on the planet. And why is that? We lost the peace. In Iraq, like in Vietnam, we won the war, but we've lost the peace. And it maybe people say, well, it's not our obligation to defend Iraq. Well, it's not our obligation, but is it at least a smart thing to do to prevent a terrorist haven from being created that's basically as well armed as the Iraqi military was?
Iraqi people aren't the problem in this war. Terrorism is. And terrorism's not over. That war's not over. We've seen that with almost the entire country of Iraq falling in less than a month.
Well, the solution is to let our military leaders do what they need to do, because a lot of times that's what happens is the policymakers cut the legs off of our military leaders and they don't allow them to complete the mission.
They look for quick decisions that they can make so that it looks to the public like they're doing something. They look forward down the road to the next election. That's their main concern, not so much how it might impact my, great-grandchildren.
You have World War II vets now that are really a dying breed. And those guys, you ask them, they want nothing more than for the generations ahead to have peace, to be able to not go to war. But every time we make a decision like Iraq, we set generations ahead of us up to go back to war with these same people that we've already defeated.
Our forefathers, they all had great foresight. They looked at as far into the future as they possibly could and tried to figure out what would be great for a society built on freedom and justice for all. And they did an amazing job. And we're around a couple hundred years later, but we're fading quickly. People have lost any pretense of being able to look forward. And somebody's going to have to pay that tab eventually.
Next time on Defending Our America.
I have a 21-year-old daughter who just registered at 21 to vote. And I had been on her for a couple of years as to registering and why she should. And finally it took a discussion and explaining to her, guys are dying for you to be able to go check that box. You got to understand that.